Right, thought I'd do a quick build overview on this guy, which you'll have seen flying a couple of times in a recent edit and in a little bit of a waffle video on the frame. So this is the Petit Soldat SX218, which I bought from Drone FPV Racer. And this is the on frame of Petit Soldat, which basically means small soldier in French. And he's a very, very good race and freestyle pilot. And the thing that sort of attracted me to this frame is it was really, really light at about 105 grams before the TPU ports, but also it had this very slender, long body, so there's tons of battery space on it, even with my bodged on GPS, which I'll come on to in a minute. So I'll sort of stick a link below to the original discussion on the frame, but just to sum it up, it's a lightweight squash-dexed freestyle frame with tons of battery space. It does come with a 3D printed GoPro ramp, but as I got a 3D printer recently, I've just printed off a GoPro Hero mount, which I've been playing with. And in terms of the build, as I said before, this is my first KISS build, KISS V2. So we're running KISS V2 flight controller and a Wolf PDB. The Wolf PDB initial impressions are it's incredible. Zero video noise, everything just works straight away without any faff, including GPS, etc. KISS 2 board is really about its firmware. The board itself is nothing special. The 5-volt regulator on it is 500 milliamps, which I haven't seen this century. So again, the board itself is nothing to shout about. It is a 32-bit F7 flight controller, so it does have the tech, but in terms of layout, etc., there's nothing really to shout about. It's just the KISS firmware that makes it special. I'm not using KISS ESCs. As I said in my other video, they're 25 quid a pop, and a couple of the lads who recently built KISS quads blew theirs up, and that trend is continuing. In fact, one of the aforementioned lads, he burnt out a motor, bought another motor, and it immediately burnt out as well, so the ESC was basically frying the motors, which is very, very rare. So I'm glad I've stayed well clear of those. I'm using the iFlight Slick ESCs, which are pretty unusual in that they're very long and very slender, which makes them perfect for the slender arms on this particular frame. These are rated to 50 amp BL Heli 32, D-Shot 1200 telemetry, and they also have the rather nice LEDs on them. Inside, beyond the KISS stuff, we've got a little self-powered 5-volt buzzer should my battery disconnect. At the front, we've got my favourite Foxeer Predator V3, which remains my overall favourite daytime camera. And sandwiched just between the flight controller and the camera, I've got a 35-volt, I think it's 680 UF capacitor. And then tucked sort of beneath the Wolf PDB, I've got a TBS Crossfire Nano, and on the underside of the top plate I've got a TBS Unify V3, and obviously at the back we've got an Immortal T, and in this case a Foxeer Lollipop V2, which is held in place by this little mount. So having put maybe sort of 20-25 packs through this guy. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention the GPS. I was just testing, so I stuck it on the back of this frame. But actually, even using a sort of 1300 more 6S LiPo and the GoPro Hero mounts, which takes up quite a bit of space with the way it leans back, my battery sort of fits perfectly between the GoPro mount and the GPS, and the GPS has worked faultlessly with KISS. It was just a case of plug it in, choose what stuff you want on your OSD, and I haven't really had to do anything else, so it's been really simple to set up. In terms of where it flies, I don't really want this to be so much about KISS, because I haven't spent enough time with it really to develop a fair comparison with it against Betaflight. Out of the box, it flies a million times better than any default Betaflight, including 4 with its RPM filters that I've ever flown. Simple as that. It's far cleaner, it's far crisper. If you go back to the video where I played a little bit of test flight footage of this guy, you know, go and listen to the motors. These motors aren't anything that I haven't used before. They're essentially the same as the iFlight Zings, just with a different bell design. But these motors sound incredible on KISS. The cleanest sounding motors I've ever heard from one of my quads, and that's basically down to the filter settings, etc., that KISS comes with. And this is on a stock setup. I haven't messed with anything other than P and I. So my initial thoughts on KISS are it flies a million times better than Betaflight in its stock format. I'm feeling a few little downsides, which are possibly more to do with my own flight style than a criticism, but it feels a little bit over crisp at times, is maybe the way I would put it. If you're a technical pilot and you know, steel and people like that, and you like those sort of perfect snap rolls where you stop on the line and there's no movement, KISS is better than anything I've ever flown on Betaflight. But because I sort of prefer the more slower, floaty, drifty style, I find it a little bit sort of, I suppose, robotic in a way, whereas Betaflight, possibly because of the tunes that I have on it, just sort of, to me, sort of just naturally flows a little bit better. And that's probably because I prefer a quad that's very light on eye gain, and sort of moves around a little bit in the air, as opposed to a perfectly crisp quad. So that's my downside about it at the moment. In terms of price and all the rest of it, I'm not really going to go there until I've spent more stick time and compared it to Betaflight 4, etc. But right now, I'm very happy that I've used it. I just need to find out how and if I can set it up perfectly to my own flight style. In terms of the frame, it flies very similar actually to my Hyperlow RS Plus, and it's a very similar sort of frame in many ways, similar weight. The RS Plus is a lot wider on its body but shorter, and my RS Plus is an X as opposed to a squashed X, but they feel, with a Hero on the front, very similar in the air. Which will prove stronger remains to be seen. I suspect this guy, with its multitude of bolts and sandwich plates, it will possibly be a little bit stronger, but we shall wait and see. The Hyperlow RS has been absolutely great for me. I have broke a couple of arms, but that's really sort of flinging it into tree dives, and not pulling up fast enough, hitting the ground, sort of really big sort of crashes where you would expect a quad with slender arms to break. So it's really sturdy. It's just not as sturdy as the CG, etc., which is a much heavier quad. So yeah, so my overall thoughts on this particular frame are, I absolutely love it. No real criticisms so far. The only thing I don't like is that this front battery strap, if I get the correct one, because it doesn't have the cutouts, you kind of end up, when you're putting your batteries on with it, it's kind of flopping and moving around everywhere. And I tend to run, when I'm flying mine, the other battery strap here, although I could put it all the way back and tuck it through these slots here. So that's really my only criticism. Everything else I think is really well thought out and perfectly designed. Maybe one or two too many cutouts on the bottom, which make it a little bit more awkward to mount your gear, and you end up having to use zip ties. which I don't particularly like, but it's a minor criticism. So yeah, so if you're in the market for a new frame, I definitely recommend this guy. I've been absolutely loving mine, and that's about it. Yeah, love the quad. Shout out to Petit Soldat. I think he's done a really good design, and this frame deserves a lot more interest than I think it's had so far. There aren't many videos about it, certainly ones that are in English. In terms of other stuff, what have I got coming up? I've got the Gep RC Crocodile 7-inch on its way, which I've been looking at for a little bit actually. I kind of fancied building a 7-inch quad for some months now, but I couldn't really find a frame that I sort of fell in love with, and a frame is always the thing that drives me into building a new quad. You know, I love this frame design, so I built a quad around it, and I couldn't really find that on 7-inch. So in the end, I just kind of kept looking at the Gep B&F, and I kind of, in the end, I thought, oh, you know what, I'm just going to ask Banggood to send it me, which they kindly have done, and I thought it'd be a good introduction to 7-inch for me, just to get my my head around. I have also potentially sold my Fat Shark HDRs, and the fault actually which I had with my HDRs turned out not to be a fault with the goggles, but a fault with not just one, not two, but three Fat Shark batteries. A normal Fat Shark battery, the type that you get with the HDRs, what is it, 2000 mAh, and two Fat Shark 18650 cases. So when it came back after being fixed, I took it out to the field, had exactly the same issues, and borrowed a mate's battery, and it worked absolutely fine, and it has done ever since I replaced 3 batteries. So there you go. Interestingly, all those batteries work absolutely fine on my SkyZone goggles. So I'm guessing the HDRs have a very sort of sensitive, very sensitive to possibly slight damage or slight drop in voltage from the actual packs. But yeah, so I've sold my HDOs, and the reason why I sold them is I've bought myself some SkyZone 03s, and the reason why I did that is because they're on offer on Banggood for 300 quid or so right now, and that was the only reason I didn't buy those in the first place, is because at the time they were sort of 420 quid, and that was so close to the price of the Fat Shark HDRs. I didn't think it was worth you know, the potential issues if you run into warranty claims, etc. But I've made the jump. I'm looking forward to receiving them, and I'll do a side-by-side comparison, because there's been quite a lot of updates to the SkyZone 03 since they were originally released, and I'm hoping that I'll get back a lot of the features that I love so much on my original SkyZone, which I'm just not getting from the HDRs. So I've got that, and I also have I think some new motors coming from Unmanned Tech, which are their own FPV motor, and Rich from Hyperlow has kindly sent me a 6-inch Hyperlow CG, and it's been over a year since I did my first Hyperlow CG review and subsequent build and subsequent falling in love with Hyperlow, and I wanted another 6-inch. My plan is to run 2 5-inch and 2 6-inch over the summer periods, so I thought I'd go back to my roots, having, you know, used the 5-inch CG for over a year with zero problems. It's still my favourite overall frame. So yeah, I thought it'd be nice to do another build around a CG. Couldn't get one in the UK because they're always out of stock, so kindly Richard sent me one, and that I think is it. So as usual, sorry for the bit of waffle, but that's kind of who I am. Yeah, all the links to this stuff will be in the description. Have a look at Drone FPV Racer. Really good shop if you live in the EU or in the UK like I do. Delivery is really cheap if you spend a fair bit, and it tends to rock up in a couple of days because they're only based in France, and they seem to stock a hell of a lot of good stuff. So yeah, that's it from me. Happy flying, and I'll leave you with a bit of flight footage from this guy. Thanks, bye bye.